Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. Haven't you ever heard of the healing power of laughter? Welcome to Reviews Without Remorse. I am Joe, and my life is really complex. With me is Dave, who is only laughing on the outside. His smile is only skin deep. If you can see inside, he's really crying. You might join him for a weep. This is episode 77, and in this episode, did you think paying $10 a month for unlimited movie passes was too good to be true? You'd be correct. Movie Pass is drowning, and we will discuss. There's a new trailer for Venom. Can Dave and I stop laughing long enough to review it? We'll see. And Reviews Without Remorse is in catch-up mode as we pay tribute to two creative geniuses we lost, Milos Forman and Stephen Bochco. And we finally finish out the San Diego Comic-Con barrage of trailers with two new DC shows, Young Justice and Titans. And finally, join us as we dance with the devil in the pale moonlight and review the original Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. Do you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Did you leave me any quotes?
This was the easiest intro I have ever written. This movie was so chock full of great lines. It was trying to figure out what lines not to use, honestly.
It's kind of like you're losing money with every new subscriber. How is this a viable business plan?
Whenever you offer an all-you-can-eat program, the first couple months, people go crazy. People want to see every movie that comes out. You know, eventually you're going to get back to a normal level. The reality is, people are going a lot more than they used to, but it's not as much as you would imagine.
So, Movie Pass. Now, I never got around to getting a subscription. I had friends of mine tell me, dude, you got to get on this. It's $10 a month for unlimited movies. You can't beat it. And I just I never got around to it because I was somehow a little skeptical. Not that I knew something was wrong, but I just sort of felt like, well, there's got to be some fine print someplace. But actually, no. It turns out that was MoviePass's business model. And anybody who guessed this was not sustainable was correct. And yeah, they are drowning.
Drowning is putting it lightly.
Yeah.
It appears that during the premiere of Mission Impossible Fallout, that people tried to use their Movie Pass and couldn't.
Depending on who you talk to, it's basically any new release now they're going to block because they just can't afford it. It came out the next morning after the release of Fallout that they literally just ran out of money and could not afford to buy the movie tickets, which is essentially what they're doing with this model. You pay them $10 a month and they buy all your tickets. They really didn't have any association with any theaters. No theater had joined them in this venture, so they just took a shot. Again, it's the weirdest business model of all because it's essentially reverse ticket scalping. It's like if I buy a ticket for a Pearl Jam concert for $100 and I give it to you for $50. Somebody's got to pay for those tickets. And apparently MoviePass decided to go after the theaters and say, hey, we're moving asses into the seats. You should be giving us money for this. And they're like, no, not really. If you want to give our tickets away for half price, why would we pay you the other half of the cost? So yeah, and basically, I mean, look, $10 a month. It's $9.95 for a month for a movie ticket. The movie ticket in my local theater is $10, and that's in the small theater. So all I got to do is see a second film. They've lost money on me, 100% of what I've given them. So anything beyond two, it makes no sense. So, yeah, swing and a miss. And apparently the stock price has just plummeted. Back in mid-July, the stock was going for 19 cents a share. At the end of July 25th, they did a reverse stock split. They wanted to get their share above $20. So if you had 20 shares of this stock, which was, for $1 each, let's say, they combined, you now had one share of stock for $20. You still had $20 worth of stock, but now you've got one stock for $20 as opposed to 20 shares for $1. So they did get their stock up to $20. But by the end of that day, it was already down to $10 a share. As of today, not only is their stock worth 8 cents a share, they also changed their business model. Now you can go see 3 movies a month for your $9.95, which I guess is basically now sort of in line with what AMC is now doing, by the way. They've reduced what they're offering you. If you bought this with the idea you could see a movie a day, well, they've apparently that is a 90% reduction in what you now got for your buck. You're now seeing 90% less than what was originally offered to you. So yeah, apparently the Movie Pass is going away quickly, and I can't really feel too bad for it because it was also very sketchy business practices that led to this.
Obviously, they had no clue what the hell they were doing, and I'm glad I didn't get in on this. I would have felt very foolish if I couldn't use my Movie Pass. So, hail and farewell, guys. It was a nice idea. Wish you knew what the hell you were doing.
We will eat both your arms and then both of your legs, and then we will eat your face right up your head. You will be this armless, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
What the hell are you?
We are Venom.
The tagline says, set in the near future, technology controls nearly all aspects of life, but when Gray, a self-identified technophobe, has his world turned upside down, his only hope for revenge is an experimental computer chip implant called STEM. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. That's for the movie Upgrade that just came out a couple of months ago. Oh, so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. That was a silly mistake. Well, we're talking about the Venom trailer.
I do not see where they're going with this movie. I don't see the point of it. You were the one who made the observation that, Venom was big in the 90s. He was created in the 80s. He, hit peak popularity maybe in the early 90s. That character, once you remove the Spider-Man story, what do you have? A big glob of black goo. First of all, effects-wise, nothing interesting about that. We've seen that a million times before. So yeah, this just looks totally empty of anything interesting. I could care less.
This has been the pet project of Avi Arad since the first time he associated himself with Marvel. He was the one that pushed for Sam Raimi to use him in Spider-Man 3, and we know how that turned out. No, there is really nothing you can do with this character, both inside and outside of the Spider-Man universe. I found him, even back in the day, like, people would talk about Venom like, oh, Venom is just so damn cool. And I'm like, okay, fellow kids, I don't get it. He's just,
I feel like Venom was only cool because he was cool to draw. Like, when you drew him with the big mouth and the big fangs, it's like, okay, I can. It's like the next version of the scary clown thing. But yeah, it doesn't really mean anything once you've removed the Spider-Man aspect. Once you've taken the evilness of Eddie Brock out of the equation. I mean, the Venom in the comics was a heightened, more evil, more angry, stronger version of Eddie Brock. Here, if Eddie Brock is just a mild-mannered schmo, and the Venom itself, it just Eddie, let's go kill people because we're mean and it's fun and whatever. That's it. That's it. It's so vapid. It is so empty of anything substantive. It's again, what have you got left now that you've taken all the interesting elements out of it? So this looks like a cheap scramble. And again, like you said, somebody's pet project. They should have done this 20 years ago or forgotten it.
Aren't you ashamed?
No, I'm not.
All right.
You know, Billy, what worries me is how your mother's going to take this.
Well, you don't have to tell her, Miss Ratchet.
Oh boy. All right, this one I'm gonna lay this one on me. Back in, I want to say February, maybe it was, I kind of made a big stink when the Oscars neglected to honor. And gosh, I wish I could remember who it was I wanted them to honor.
There was a few that they missed, but go ahead.
Yeah, there was a couple of people that they missed. Adam West. One of them was Adam West. They did not honor Adam West. And I made a big stink, and we both kind of said, we're going to cover these people. These are important people in the industry. They're not only important in the industry, but they influenced us, so we're going to make sure to cover them all the time. We missed 2. Back in April 13th of 2018, at the age of 86, we lost Milos Forman. The fact that I missed this one hurts. Because this is not some rinky-dink little director here, ladies and gentlemen. This is not some flash in the pan or anything like that. This is a guy who gave us One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Hair, Ragtime, Amadeus, Valmont, The People vs. Larry Flint, Man on the Moon, Goya's Ghosts, for God's sake. This was Milos Forman, and we missed him, Joe.
That... I am kind of stunned. I tell you, too, when you told me that we missed, I thought for sure you were going to tell me that this happened last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. Back in April. That boggles my mind. I don't know how we missed this. And because, again, it just means that no one mentioned it. I mean, because I'm a pretty regular consumer of entertainment media. No one mentioned this. So, yeah, and that, like you said, he was no slouch. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was an amazing film. So many careers, I think, were catapulted from that film.
Danny DeVito, Christopher Lloyd, just to name 2.
Yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible film, and then he went on to Amadeus and, Larry Flint. I mean, these are important films. So
Indeed.
and varied films, by the way. I mean, to go from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Hair, and then end up at Amadeus and do a period. I mean, again, these are very varied films, and all of them are spectacular and Oscar winners. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm a little frustrated with myself and with the industry in general that this just went under the radar.
Dispatch, Unit 911. I'm Rob in progress. See surplus store corner People's Drive, 124th Street.
Now, sometimes there's guys behind the scenes that you kind of sort of hear of, but you don't think about. And that's who Stephen Bochco was. When I first mentioned Stephen Bochco to Joe, he was like, "Who's that?" And I remember looking at my phone from the text reply, looking at the phone thinking like, you know who he is. Don't pretend like you don't know who he is. You just forgot. And I had to remind him. I was like, dude, Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blue. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah. Well, he started his career as a writer. He was a writer for Macmillan and Wife, The Bold Ones, Columbo. And then eventually he went off and became a creator, and he created a couple of cities. His first TV series that he created was called Paris. I don't remember it, so I'm just going to move on. The second TV show he created was called Bay City Blues, but he finally got the blues correct when he created the TV show Hill Street Blues. And for the younger members of our audience, this is an extremely influential TV show. 100% influential TV show. Any cop drama, fireman drama, this show was the blueprint for it.
Law shows, hospital shows, I think all of them owe this film a huge debt.
Absolutely. This was his show. He wrote like 60 episodes out of the 144 episodes that they got. He then went on to create another show called Cop Rock, which we don't have to talk about because it was terrible.
He calls you son, he's not your dad, he's just a dumb white cop and you made him mad.
Punk with a badge, call himself a man, worked all his life for his 89 grand, look real pretty with a gun in his hand, you take it away, he's a chump.
It was 11 episodes of, Hill Street Blues meets a chorus line with a bunch of actors dancing and singing, and then this little TV show that gave us the wonderful Neil Patrick Harris. He created Doogie Howser and L.A. Law. He was working right up. He just had a TV series canceled not a year ago called Murder in the First, sticking again with the public service angle of things. He died in his home in Los Angeles at the age of 74 on April 1st, 2018, and I'm sure he was quite tickled to have died on April Fool's Day.
Wally and I really had something special together. Leaving the whole hero thing behind so we could just be normal. But when Nightwing called, I couldn't say yes fast enough.
Young Justice. Now, I didn't know anything about this before you showed it to me, and I know you happen to be a big fan of this series. Tell me a little bit about it.
The first episode introduced us to Batman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Green Arrow. All of their sidekicks for the first time are being brought to the Hall of Justice to be given, a tour and to begin their mission, to begin their quest to become full League members, as opposed to just being sidekicks and not being involved with League stuff. But it turns out that the first step is basically barely a baby step, basically a PR thing for people outside the Hall of Justice. The four of them then decide, screw it, and they go off on their own mission. They impress Batman so much that he goes, you know what? We're going to make you guys a Dark Ops team. You're going to go on missions that the League can't afford to be caught doing. That is the story of Young Justice. And it was beautiful. And it was brilliant. And all of the episodes are available for you to watch, and you better watch them. And it was cut down in its prime. And do you know why it was cut down in its prime?
Why?
Because the toys didn't sell.
Hey, and they're still making Star Wars movies, but go ahead.
This show truly, truly respected the DC universe. I learned more about the DC universe through this show than I ever did when I was reading comic books, because I was kind of only okay with DC. I was a Batman fan. That was about it. This show made me love so much more of the DC universe. You have no idea. Introduced me to villains I never even thought of before. Made me love Aqualad. It made me love Aqualad, dude. So that should just tell you all you need to know about the series. Now, the show was canceled, and then when DC decided they were going to do their own, say it with me, streaming service, the show was brought back to life. They got the original writers, the original cast members. This is the third season of Young Justice that I have been waiting for since 2014, and I am so gosh darn happy about it. And this trailer excites me to nobody's end. It excites me because it shows me possibility. It shows me, a world. Now, when you see the full series, you'll understand why that whole thing about, missing metahumans, blah, 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 is such a big deal. They did a great job of intricately weaving plots through 2 seasons. It took 2 seasons to get to a whole endgame. And it was brilliantly done. And it was wonderfully performed. Beautifully animated. Truly a series that I really, really loved. And I'm just so happy that season 3 is coming out. Not till 2019, but yes, an excellent, excellent show. Cut way too short. Joe, I can't say much more without spoiling stuff. Just please, 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 please. It is my second favorite comic book animated TV show. My first being Batman the Animated Series. Please watch it.
The series looks tremendous. This trailer looked beautiful. I mean, the animation and the art is just stunning. So I could totally see this being totally up your alley and being totally something worth watching.
I really, really want you to watch it, Joe. I really do. I really want to talk about this show with you because it really, truly is a love letter to the entire DC universe.
Where's Batman?
Fuck Batman.
Then again, there's Titans.
Are you kidding? Are you really serious with this? This is so ridiculous that again, and I've used this analogy before, and I think I've used it when I should have saved it for this one. This looks like parody. This looks like a joke. If I didn't know better, I would swear this was like a fan film that somebody did as a joke to goof on what they're doing with the DCEU. This looks so stupid and just awful. When this thing closes with the shattering glass and the screaming, I'm saying to myself, this has to be a gag. This is somebody goofing on. No, this is just terrible.
The Teen Titans was a TV show from the late 90s, early 2000s, animated.
When there's trouble, you know who to call. Teen Titans!
Where's Batman?
Fuck Batman.
Excellent show, very well done. Certainly within my top 10 of animated TV series. It got canceled as these things happened. They used all the voice actors to do Teen Titans Go. Now, my son has been dying for a live-action Teen Titans TV show. So when I told him about this, he was quite excited. And when I told him that they changed the name from Teen Titans to just Titans, he's like, well, I guess they have to kind of like try to adult it up a little bit for, to get more appeal, which I found to be quite insightful for a 14-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched the trailer, and then Robin said, fuck Batman.
Fuck Batman.
And I was like, no, I'm done. I don't have to see anything else. But then the rest of it played out, and I was like, oh my God, do you not know a damn thing about these characters?
I think the neck crunching is what did it for me. When you actually heard him stomp the guy's neck and the crunch of his neck breaking, that was when I was like, all right, I see what we're doing here.
Okay, Joe, let me compare and contrast something to you. It's a tiny, tiny little bit of a spoiler, but I want you to hear what I'm about to say to you, okay? In an episode of Young Justice, there's a discussion amongst the Justice League where they're talking about the morality of bringing somebody so young along to Batman. They're talking to Batman about the morality of bringing somebody young along into this lifestyle. And I think Wonder Woman said something along the lines of like, why would you bring this kid into this, so he can become just like you? And Batman's response was no, so he wouldn't.
Mm.
One of my favorite lines in that damn series. This is why that is completely wrong. Robin never killed. Ever. Ever.
Yeah.
The whole point with Batman and Robin was yes, he was hard on him. Yes, he was tough with him. But it was all to help him and so that he wouldn't become like Bruce Wayne. Screw this show. Screw it. Up its butt. May it hurt. And may spikes come out of the dildo that is used when it goes up your butt.
Vicky Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
Lieutenant, is there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Nice outfit.
You look fine.
I didn't ask. I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
The Dark Knight of Gotham City begins his war on crime with his first major enemy being the clownishly homicidal Joker. Written by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron, story by Sam Hamm, based on the DC Comics character created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane, directed by Tim Burton, 1989's Batman. So let's put a little backstory on this. This is a 30-year-old movie, first of all. Let's throw that out there.
Yeah.
This movie is 30 years old.
It's amazing.
Back when this movie came out, Batman was not really taken seriously by a lot of people outside of the comic book realm. He was mostly known for Adam West's portrayal, which they have recently and lovingly referred to him as the Bright Knight, and I'm quite fond. I'm quite fond of that particular nomenclature for him. But at the time, that's what it was known for. He was known for being, very satire, very slapsticky, very I can't think of the word right now.
Campy.
But campy. Thank you. That was the word. Campy. I can't believe I couldn't think of campy. Here's something that, like, if the internet was invented back then, would have been a very, very interesting mix of reactions. Okay? Wait a minute. You mean the guy who directed Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Mr. Mom are going to make a Batman movie, I could have just seen the pages of people complaining about that stuff. Michael Keaton was known at the time mostly for being a comedic actor. Tim Burton had Pee-wee and I think maybe Beetlejuice under his belt by the time he got to Batman. Now, this is the time frame they were dealing with. Nobody really took Batman very, very seriously. And here's the funny part. Like, Tim Burton is self-admitted he doesn't like comic books. So there's going to be elements of this movie that aren't really going to work. But there's going to be other elements in this movie that surprisingly do. And I still liked it.
I'm with you 100%. You know, like you said, it's more of a Tim Burton film, I think, than an actual Batman film. It certainly did put the character in a very different light. Now, again, like you said, this was a time when superhero films were pretty scarce. And by the way, this is probably the height of... This is when DC was on top and Marvel was way not even close, ironically. But yeah, this was... I mean, at this point, we had some great Superman films and, of course, some not so great Superman films. So it was Batman's turn to sort of take the reins and let's see what we can do with this one. And yeah, the choice of Tim Burton was interesting because, again, I think he was known as somebody who could probably give us a pretty good dark gothic film, and that works for what Batman is. So, okay. But yeah, it's not exactly the take on the character that I think you or I would have looked for.
No.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if you and I, because I know people should know Dave is the Batman fan. He is our resident Batman guy. So I'm curious to see, how you feel about this film. But yeah, I went back and saw it again. It was great because Mary had never seen it before. So the two of us watched it over the weekend. She giggled and laughed pretty much throughout the whole thing. She really did enjoy it. And yeah, and I did too. I mean, I've seen it before many times, obviously. I saw it in the theater. I remember the huge hype machine that was happening before this film came out. So yeah, I remember seeing it. I remember really enjoying it. And I'm also curious to see, again, it's funny as we talk about it, trying to sort of separate how I felt when I first saw it with how it has aged today, how it survived. But I'm with you in terms of the fact I think this is a pretty great film still. It's got its own identity, and it lives up to what it wanted to do. I mean, I'm always big on if the film does what it sets out to do, then mission accomplished. This one does that. It's got a pretty solid identity that later films will sort of, again, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, this one is pretty solid, I think. It's not hugely ambitious by today's standards, but at the time, it was pretty spectacular. And I think the thing that really does keep this thing fresh and very enjoyable, very watchable today is the performances. The performances in this film, I think, are really spot on. They are really fun. And again, no one thought Michael Keaton would do justice to Batman. He ends up being a spectacular Batman. Some today even think he's the best. And again, I mean, when you see his performances today, you can see it was almost like back then, do I have the confidence in even liking this? But then today, as time goes on, you see the great things that Michael Keaton is doing today. Now people are going, I loved him back then. I knew he would be good, or I liked him way back when. And I don't even have to mention Jack Nicholson's Joker. Again,
yeah.
Whether or not it jives with your interpretation of that character, you have to really give Jack Nicholson credit. This is a very solid, very enjoyable performance. Jack Nicholson was a guy at that time where you said, wow, he would do a great Joker. And he did. You got exactly what you signed on for when you saw it. And again, it's watching him today is just as fun, I find, as he was back then.
Completely agree with you, man. He was the staple for Joker at the time when this came out. There had not been an interpretation of Joker that was close to the comic book at this time. There had not been an interpretation of Batman that had been close to the comic book. The Burton version, the 1989 Burton version, from a Batman perspective, it's close. It's the closest that they've ever gotten.
At that point.
At that point. The offshoot of this, of these two movies, of the two Burton movies, Batman and Batman Returns, which we're going to get to next week, is that it gave us Batman the Animated Series, which got Batman 100% correct. And, in fact, wound up being a reverse influence on the comic books. But we should do that when we should definitely go over the Batman Animated Series at some point. They are releasing that on Blu-ray. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yep, they just announced it. They're releasing it all on Blu-ray, completely remastered. I can't wait to get it.
Cool.
So, from a Batman perspective, it's close. And back in 1989, close was close enough. I had one friend that was like, man, and ladies and gentlemen, we're in spoiler territory, but honestly, if you haven't seen a 30-year-old movie and you listen to our show, just get out. Just get out. Okay? In this one, the big shock is that Joker, before he became the Joker, was the one who killed Bruce Wayne's parents.
Very true.
And that made a friend of mine really upset. It's like, Joker did not kill Bruce Wayne's parents. Like, look, I get it, but you know what? This is, I swear to you, I remember saying this. It's like, I get it. I do. And I'm not happy with it either. But this is a seed. We need this seed to grow. And it did.
Yeah.
And it which, unfortunately, it grew kind of wild from, say, Batman Forever forward until Christopher Nolan came back and brought us back with Batman Begins. But that's a whole other story for another time. It's not faithful to the comics in that respect. In the comics, it was just an anonymous guy. It was just a random act.
Yeah.
And anytime they tried to make it more than a random act, it always ruined the story as far as I was concerned.
Spider-Man 3, looking at you.
This is the man that killed your uncle.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. That kind of a mistake when they do that. This one, it was interesting. In this case, it was interesting because, again, I did feel like they did have to, and I've sort of made this point about the first Spider-Man. It's got a lot to do in terms of getting this movie off the ground and getting it so that, again, you can't do sequels unless this one works. So, yeah, at the end, they kill off the Joker. A lot of people went, what? But, yeah, it did sort of complete this film and give a sense of satisfaction. The added element of having the Joker be the one to kill Batman's parents also makes it very personal, makes the end very satisfying. You're sort of at the point where, like, why is there a Batman Joker? Why are they pitted against each other in this film? Joker's kind of a random bad guy. Batman's kind of new to the scene. So that sort of did add an element of, this is why Batman is determined to get this guy. So I know what you're saying, but I did feel like it kind of worked in this film. Just having him getting carted up to jail to get trotted out for another one in the future. First of all, are you really going to get Jack Nicholson to do another one? Probably not. So you might as well just sort of end this character here. And also, again, I think story-wise it works.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I'm gonna be a little dicey about that because there's a couple of issues that I would have with that, because then it kind of feels like if he knew that Jack Napier was the killer of his parents, why didn't he just go after him before he became the Joker?
Well, that's a good question. The impression I got was that he really didn't know about him until he revealed himself as the Joker, and he makes the connection that was the same guy. Because again, get me everything you know on Jack Napier. That was sort of how I read it. That he didn't even know Jack Napier was on the radar until the Joker reveals himself, and he sort of makes the connection. That's that same guy. In fact, I think it's the moment where the shootout on the steps of the courthouse.
Yeah, I remember that. But you know what? Let me stop the complaint train for one moment and just point out this is a beautifully shot movie.
Yes.
And the set and production design is amazing. For that alone, this movie gets a ton of props with me. The Batman costume is beautiful. The best representation at the time for the Batman costume, with the exception of the fact that he can't turn his damn neck.
Yeah.
Nicholson is perfect as this Joker. Keaton is perfect as this Batman and Bruce Wayne. It's one of those rare cases where I felt he worked in both as opposed to one or the other. But the plot is, relatively nonsensical. Because yes, I remember he's on the steps. He's on the steps and he's like, oh my God, it's him. And he just and he gets shot in the arm and he doesn't even notice that he gets shot in the arm and he goes away. And the thing is that if that was the case, if he realized, oh my God, Jack Napier's alive. So now what we've got here is, okay, so if that's the scene where he realized that Jack Napier is the one that killed my parents, what in that scene gave him that indication that was it? It wasn't until later in the movie when he goes to Vicky's apartment and he's going to confess that he's Batman, and he's like, tell me, my friend, do you ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? And that's when he gives him the shocked look, like, what? That's the moment when he realizes it. So
I was waiting for you to mention that, but yeah, go ahead.
So then why? Then here's the next part. If that's something he says all the time, why the hell is this the first time we're hearing it in the movie?
Yes, both of those. You're absolutely right. There are basically two reveal scenes where he essentially realizes, because again, if that's not what's happening on the court steps, then I don't know what that's about. But yeah, so essentially there's sort of two scenes that there's some reveal, oh my God, that's that guy. So yeah, that's a little clunky. I agree.
It could be that, oh my goodness, that's the guy I dropped in the acid. I accidentally dropped in the acid, he's alive. That could be what that was supposed to be, and that's fine. But then we get back to the other portion of it, which is, where the hell did Dance with the Devil come from? He said it twice throughout the entire movie. Once before he shot Bruce Wayne, and the second time in the flashback when he shot Bruce Wayne's parents. That's it.
That's a good point. And I guess you're probably right. That is probably how they would respond, by saying that the first reveal, he's only realizing, oh, that's the guy I dropped in the chemicals, which is, I guess, was probably what he was saying at the beginning of the Vicky Vale's apartment scene when he says, I know who you are. He's really saying, I know you're that guy who got, okay, fair enough. But then he makes the further realization that was also the guy who killed his parents how many years ago. I guess that's probably what the answer is. But yeah, it is a little strange. Why does he not say it until that scene? Well, does he really kill a lot of people up until that point? I mean, he kills the guy he kills Jack Palance, obviously. I think that's...
he kills Eckhart in Ace Chemicals.
Yeah.
He kills Grissom. He kills Antoine. Remember, Antoine's getting a little hot under the collar.
Exactly, yeah.
He killed the guy on the steps. He's killed a bunch of people by this point. And God knows what the hell he's been doing with Alicia.
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it. Never rub another man's rhubarb.
A friend of mine and I were actually in this discussion, and we're going to get into this more when we do the Nolan trilogy. She pointed out to me that the second Nolan movie, The Dark Knight, is a sloppy, plot-hole-filled movie that's saved by a performance by Heath Ledger. And at one moment I was going to be like, well, but then it's like I thought about it, and I was like, well, you and I will discuss this more in detail. But it made me think. That's like, is there such a thing as even the shoddiest of screenplays that can be elevated by good direction, good acting, and great set design? And I'm here to tell you that this movie kind of proves that, because it is a very, very simple and not very tight plot. But it's a fun damn movie.
Yeah.
And it's told well. And it's shot beautifully. And all the most of the actors, we'll get to Kim Basinger in a little bit. All the actors give their all for the part. Even the bit player guys. Like, there's this one point where he's in the museum and that Prince song is playing, and there's a guy, he's painting like the statue's head green.
Yeah.
And the actor who's doing it just has this big grin on his face, like, this is awesome. And I'm like, yes, that's kind of how I would be if I was in that scene.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up The Dark Knight, because honestly, I've got questions about the plot as well. And I say to myself, honestly, what is the Joker's goal? What is his end game? And frankly, I feel like, well, this movie relies on it's got the same out that The Dark Knight does, insofar as, well, the Joker is an agent of chaos. That's all you need to know. With that in mind, we can sort of do what we feel with the plot and fall back on that as our reasons for why it doesn't make any sense. Because the Joker doesn't make any sense because he's crazy. I guess I sort of have to accept it, because that is essentially part of the character, I guess. But, again, I mean, the Joker, first he wants to become the head of the organized crime. Then shortly after that, he decides to kill them all, which he does before the courtroom steps, by the way, because he's talking to Antoine. Grease him now, so I should just kill them all. Oh, well, okay, but if you kill all the guys, who's going to do your bidding? And why does the Joker suddenly have like an infinite, number of goons to just do what he says?
With wonderful, wonderful labels and lapels on them. Did you notice they all wore purple jackets with the Joker's face on the left breast area?
Yeah.
In 24 hours, man, that guy moves fast.
Right. So seriously.
That's a hustler for you,
there
man.
You go. And then you get to the scene at the end. The Joker. Well, then you're throwing in the Vicky Vale stuff, which again we'll talk about later. That little subplot of he's got a crush on Vicky Vale. But then he wants to do the parade, and he's going to drop money on the crowd because he wants to be seen, even though he's already killed people. He's already killed people at the museum. He's already defaced all this stuff. I mean, he's already done bad stuff. But now he wants to sort of he wants to win the crowd over, win the city over by, I'm going to throw money on the crowd. But then he's just going to kill everybody for no reason. Why? I don't know. Again, because he's a maniac and wants to kill people. That's going to be what the answer is going to be. So I'm almost answering my own question. But again, as far as a legit plot goes, I'll just say it this way. It's a very nice convenience to just say the Joker's crazy, and that's why the plot doesn't really have to make sense.
The motivations for the Joker isn't the key to the whole thing. Because the Joker, even in the comic books, when Liam was younger and he was trying to understand what the deal is with the Joker, I don't even remember how I came up with this, and I said that, because the Joker thinks murder is funny. And that was the best I could come up with, and he accepted it as that. And there's something to be said about that. Funny part is in the novelization for the movie, they must have cut the scene for it. You know how he made that joke at one point, my face on the $1 bill?
Yes, and I was going to touch on that, but go ahead.
It seems that originally it was supposed to be that the money that was dropped on the crowd had his face on it, so it wasn't even real money. Yeah. That was the joke.
It's funny you say that, because I picked up on that also, and I didn't really notice it until this time around, but it was actually, if you notice, it's actually a three-parter, because when he first goes into the museum, there's the George Washington on the wall.
Yeah.
And he just goes,
the $1 bill.
Yeah, he goes, oh, look, the $1 bill. And then 5 minutes later, he wants my face on a $1 bill. It's almost like you can see where the seed was planted, then it keeps going, and then it goes to fruition. But like you said, they don't show it in the film, but in the comic version, it was still there. And I specifically remember that comic, by the way.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, which was perfect, which is the perfect way to end it. That's such a Joker thing to do.
It's weird that they cut it out, because you would think that would sort of, like I said, that sort of brought the whole thing to fruition, that whole $1 bill thing. And again, he's already screwing these people. I mean, again, why would he throw real money on the crowd if he's going to kill them all anyway? So that made perfect sense.
It would have been really tough to try to get the money back from all the people after he's thrown all the money on.
Exactly, right.
The strength of this movie is at the time, this was Batman told in a way that hadn't been told before. And the real miracle is the fact that it actually still kind of holds up. Yeah, the plot is kind of loose, but it still holds up. It's still an enjoyable little romp. The fight scenes are fun. I'm still amazed they got some of those moves out of that costume. That costume looked uncomfortable as hell.
Yeah, that's very true. And actually, I mean, that does say a lot for just the way they filmed it, the choreography. They were able to sort of figure out how to maximize the motions and movement out of that costume. Because like I said, I mean, it seems shockingly, uncomfortable and hard to get around in. I mean, and I love, and seriously, there's that hero turn. Like every time he has to turn, his whole body has to flip around so he can turn around.
Right.
Because he can't turn his neck.
And the cape just flows beautifully when he does that.
Oh, that's, yeah. I mean, that was, yeah. See, that was the thing with this. I mean, all those shots, like the big shot when he crashes through the window in the ceiling of the museum and the cape flares out. So you get like that's a tremendous shot. For back then, that was tricky stuff.
Yeah, as a stunt or just in regular. Yeah, it was beautiful, beautiful stuff. It was something new and different.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that Burton brought to this. He always had this very unique vision, and he was able to bring that in there and bring out some elements that are still an influence to this day. For example, the grapple gun.
Yeah.
Until this movie, that was not a staple of Batman. Batman would just use a batarang and throw the rope that way. That was the way he used to do it. The shape of the car. The original classic car was similar to that, but that is the most iconic shape for the car.
Yeah.
The gravelly voice. Although Keaton did it best.
That, the whole I'm Batman. I mean, that has stayed forever. And this is where that comes from.
This movie is a tremendous influence still to this day. Even the video games, like the last Batman game that they came out with, actually had Adam West doing some voiceover for it, and at some point he said they're doing a flashback to the 60s versions of Batman. He's like, "You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts."
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Besides the weak plot, there is one other weakness, and we're going to have to mention it. She's a pretty lady, but oh my God, every time she was on the screen, she was so stilted. Kim Basinger.
Yeah, she's one of those actresses I really don't. I mean, like you said, she's very pretty, but as far as acting goes, I'm not seeing it. And I mean, this is an Oscar-winning actress, by the way.
Yeah, for what was it? L.A. Confidential,
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
In her defense, she was great in that part. There wasn't much that she had to really put into it, but yeah, that was a good part, and I thought she did a fine job with it. But that aside, her entire thing is, why is she wearing the mask? It's like, Joker, please kill her. Please kill her.
Why is she wearing a mask?
The only thing she was able to do well was scream. And then after the third time she screamed, I was like,
there you go.
Stop it.
Right.
Stop it.
Wow. Yeah, she was definitely the Willie Scott of this film. Yeah, that was tough. That was she is that a lot of, you're right, a lot of screaming, and again, just sort of a weird character in general. From what I understand is that there were iterations of the script. By the way, Robert Wuhl is kind of a fun actor to sort of throw into this film. I like him in a lot of things. So he's got good presence, I think. But yeah, I think in certain iterations of the script, there was a little more of a competition romantically between he and Bruce Wayne for the affections of Vicky Vale.
Right.
They pretty much stripped most of that away, and you're sort of left with a couple strange lines in this film that kind of just try to show you that he's interested in her because she's pretty. Yeah, but it's a little clunky, and again, and plus they also very quickly, I have a date with Bruce Wayne, which kind of comes out of nowhere, and the way that plays out, you're almost watching this saying, like, how did this happen? Like, because again, Bruce, he's so uninterested in her. It's like, again, they meet at the party. Then you cut to a scene later where she goes, can't make it, got a date with Bruce Wayne. Well, how did that happen? Did he call her and ask her out or something? Because again, then when they do the scene, which is a good scene, by the way, where they're in the dining room with the long table. Mm-hmm. Again,
I thought that was a cute scene for the beginning of a date. Yes.
Yeah, it was. And again, it sort of highlights the idea that he's ridiculously rich. And I like how they played him, by the way, as a very quirky character. It worked for this. But yeah, that whole I have a date thing all of a sudden, and then like they hang out, and it's almost like he's so aloof in the beginning, and then they the scene plays out well, where now they cut to the kitchen scene where Alfred's telling funny stories about Bruce Wayne when he's young in an effort to humanize him. Okay, fine. But again, then they go to bed, right? Fine. Who wouldn't want to go to bed with Kim Basinger? And I'm sure Kim Basinger's got no problem throwing her legs up for a billionaire, handsome guy. But
whoa! Let's not demean the character that much. But go on.
Well, it's not that okay, fair enough. I don't mean to throw her under the bus. It's just that the romance is sort of forced into this, and it doesn't play out well. Like again, it's almost like you were all looking at this saying, how is this connection happening? Because again, it gets worse later. Because that infamous scene, by the way, later when Alfred keeps again. Now Bruce Wayne is basically he's basically blown her off. For all practical purposes, he's said, I'm going away for a while, goodbye.
Right.
A normal woman would have taken the hint and been pissed off and just taken the hint and gone away. But for some reason, she's still sort of hanging around in the peripherals. And then that weird scene later when Alfred brings her into the Batcave. Alfred is so convinced that, right, which goes down in history as like, really? Like, I've had one date with this girl and my whole secret identity is destroyed and thrown away. So yeah, that is sort of odd. Again, why now there's this connection that Alfred now says, I'm gonna bring her into the Batcave, blowing his secret identity because he needs someone in his life. Okay, but then she sort of does that typical girl stuff, frankly. I thought we had a connection, and I thought this, to where he has to go, oh, honey, don't worry, it's all cool. No, I like you. Again, almost very high schoolish. And I mean, the writing is good, the execution is decent, but underneath it is it's like there's no substance there. So, yeah, it just kind of makes for a very quirky, weird, thrown-in relationship just because we need a female lead to get rescued and stuff, but not a lot to it.
Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
We are a little over, but it is that time. This movie, for its time, was a triumph. There was nothing like it before, and since then, there hasn't been really much like it since. The plot is all over the place. It's not really the most coherent plot of all, but it's still a fun flick. It's still, at the time when it came out, it was the best Batman that we had ever gotten. And even in the rewatching of it, I still found myself so charmed by it. By the wonderful performance by Jack Nicholson. By Michael Keaton truly throwing himself into the part, really feeling the part and being the part. The wonderful art direction. The amazing costume, which I'm sure the costume commander was relatively pleased with. But we'll get to that when he gets to his side. The Batmobile, again, all of it. I really had a fun time with this movie. I gave it an 8.
It's funny you say that. I also gave it an 8. And I'm kind of surprised that both of us did, frankly, because again, I thought for sure I was going to look back on this and I felt like I was going to watch a 7. I felt like this was easily going to be a 7 movie that, 30 years ago it was great, now it's still fine, but whatever. But again, I did find myself enjoying it very much all over again. And it's funny how for a movie that prides itself on being dark, ugly, bleak, the makeup, the people wearing the makeup, the bad guys, I mean, trying desperately to make these people look awful. And I I still laugh at the scenes where, because the makeup is tainted, that now the news reporters look hideous on camera because they don't have a stitch of makeup to cover up things.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's very Burton-esque, by the way. The ugly reality behind the polished exterior. So yeah, I mean, all good stuff. But it's funny for a movie that's taking pride in being so ugly. I mean, look at the museum set. The museum set looks like they hung famous paintings in a steel mill. Some ugly warehouse. I mean, again, it looks hideous. it's so funny that we look at this movie and call it charming, because that is exactly what it is. So yeah, it's the charm that it produces now. I mean, there's probably a nostalgia factor too, and maybe now, in the more cynical films we get today, what was trying to be sort of faux cynical back then now has a funny charm to it. So yeah, like you said, everything that they try to do does hit. Seriously, the Batmobile again. I mean, what a piece of work that is. That even today it still looks fascinating. That this thing actually drove, for God's sakes. The sets are spectacular. And again, you're dealing with very tight. I mean, how many times do we see the Monarch Theater? To the point where
17 times. 17 times.
Is that right? To the point where I said to myself, why didn't they just change the letters? I mean, they could have just called it something different, and we probably wouldn't even have caught on for at least many viewings that it was the same corner. But it was like every time I turn around, they're right in front of the Monarch Theater. But hey, again, the final product is pretty spectacular. It's pretty impressive what they were able to do. And again, this was incredibly original. As you said, the closest thing they had to a Batman at this point was Adam West 20 years earlier. So this was a feat. It absolutely was a landmark in filmmaking, and probably one of the earliest comic book films that we should today look back on and say thank you. Because again, I don't think comic book films today would be what they were had it not been for these films. And by the way, it was still a radical departure from the Christopher Reeve Superman, by the way. It was. So, I mean, as opposed to falling back on that, because that was working at least for a while before they went downhill. That at that point was the only noticeable superhero film that I can remember. So yeah, I have to give this film credit for being original. It was solely original, solely its own thing. So yeah, it was a risk. It was a big risk, and it pays off. So yeah, I feel pretty comfortable with that 8, surprisingly.
Yeah, good man. Good for you.
Oh, good for you.
Stand by your numbers, sir. Stand by your numbers. Hey, Joe?
Yeah?
Who asked you?
I get a hunch we're probably going to be pretty similar on this one, but the only thing I can really fall back on and just kind of, I'm going to go on the Vicky Vale character and just say not only is the performance very wooden, I think the word you used was stilted, and that was perfect. The screaming is annoying. And again, just kind of oddly written. Again, I have no problem with a film with a hero needing an attractive leading lady to just rescue once in a while. Again, there's something we are sadly missing today. Having said that, yeah, the writing to get her in this is clunky at best, and just not the strongest part of the film by any stretch.
Agreed. I can't disagree with that at all. I had 3.
Wow. Okay.
My top 3. Who asked you?
Oh,
Number
I bet you I can
3.
guess. I bet you I can guess one of them. But go ahead.
Okay. Number 3. So right after their first date, Vicky decides to look up in the newspaper's files about Bruce Wayne. And there's nothing in the file. There's nothing in the file about a millionaire's parents being killed, who they wind up finding the damn article through like the microfiche or whatever the hell it is. But in their immediate file, that's not in there? Right.
Yeah, they try to sort of play him as sort of a Howard Hughes type in this, and which is fine, but yeah, that it doesn't really work that much. You're right. How do you have? What do you mean? There's no file on Bruce Wayne in the newspaper?
That made no sense to me.
No.
That was just like for drama's sake.
Agreed.
Number 2, Kim Basinger was hired because she could scream well, and that's about it. And then they overused the damn screen. That just. Oh, God. Every time she was on the screen, I was so glad she didn't come back for the sequel. But the number 1, the thing that, from the day the movie came out, it was the one thing I could never, ever forgive the movie for. Ever Dance with the Devil, something I always say, but he only said it once.
Yeah,
that really, really, even back in the day, it's just something I always say. It's like, When did you always say that? Why? When that really got on my damn nerves, and that was back at 30 years ago, and to this day it still bothers me. So yes, that's the one thing that if I could get in there, I'd be like, just all he has to do is say it before he kills Grissom. That's it. He just had to say it before he killed Grissom.
That's true, and if they just did it once, like you said, frankly, he could have used it at any point, killing somebody else. You would have had that nice rule of three, where you had, he said it one time, then he said it to Bruce Wayne, what makes him go, huh? Then the flashback would have been the third time, so that would have worked out nicely.
Yeah, Grissom would have been the perfect one. He didn't have to say it with Eckhart, because then Batman would have overheard him, and then that would have caused other plot problems. But he just could have said it. Jack is dead, my friend. You can call me Joker. Ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? Bang! That would have been perfect.
I think the Antoine scene might have worked as well, too. No hard feelings, and then just sort of say it right before you grab his hand or something. That would have worked, too. I got to tell you, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
What did you think I was going to say?
I thought at least one of those three would have been Batman kills in this film, even though it's, and people make the argument that it's not until later Batman films that people sort of take issue with this, but technically it happens here.
Yeah, it does.
Any issues with that, my friend?
Yes, but this goes back to the conversation I had with my friend who said, I can't believe they made Joker the killer of his parents. And my rationale at the time, and I'm going to stick with this rationale to this day, is that, look, they're not going to get everything right, but they got so much right. And this is a seed. This is going to grow into something better. And I feel like if not for this movie, we wouldn't have Batman Begins, which I'm going to just say it right now is my favorite Batman movie of all time right now.
The thing I would add to that, frankly, is that I think this is an exercise in how tone defines a lot of things.
Yeah.
Again, people argue back and forth, when you say that, Superman kills Zod at the end of Man of Steel. Someone else will turn around and go, yeah, well, he killed him at the end of Superman 2 and nobody had a problem with that. To which I say, yeah, but again, tone is everything. Again, I understand that technically he kills him at the end, but the tone of the film is very different. I don't want him to crack his neck and scream and shriek and whatever at the end, like, this is terrible. I'm
sad!
Right. I mean, the fact that it is done in a kind of off-screen, little more lighthearted way in the other one, it does get a pass for that reason. And yeah, I will sort of make the same argument here. Yes, technically he kills, but again, it's off-screen. It's done in a kind of a funny way, which somebody might tell me is a contradiction in terms. Again, it's how it's handled. So yeah, I thought it was handled perfectly fine in this one. Technically, when he blows up the factory, there are people right there in it. Yeah, I get that. And technically, he takes aim at the Joker, but he doesn't get him. And the fact that he doesn't get him is part of the point. Again, it's written in a way where he swings and misses. So, and he kills him later, technically also. So, but again, the tone is very different. I don't mind it in this one nearly as much as I do in other things they will talk about another time.
Understood, my man. Understood. Well, how about for your consideration then?
Again, I hate to go with the obvious, but I'm going to. That performance by Jack Nicholson as the Joker never gets old. It's so well done, so well handled, so the juicy lines, the plethora of juicy lines in this film uttered by the Joker.
Which he sells.
Which he totally sells. He totally sells. Yeah. I mean, it literally comes off as if it's coming right off the cuff. And I've heard since that this is one of Nicholson's own favorite performances, so much so that even he would sit and watch the movie. Because he enjoyed doing it, and he enjoyed how it sort of what the final product was. It's terrific. They really did a great job with it. The only thing that I kind of scratch my head a little bit is that his character, before he becomes the Joker, before he falls into the chemicals, is so different that I kind of sometimes I find it a little jarring. Like, did the chemicals go into his brain to make him nuts too? Maybe, but it kind of seems to only happen when he grabs the mirror and actually sees himself. That's when the change sort of happens. And Anyway, but that's a minor point. I think it's a great performance. And it was funny too. Back then I hated the makeup, the actual facial prosthetics to make the smile.
Mm-hmm.
Now I like it. I like it much more now than I did back then. But back then I kind of felt like it looked a little too weird. Why do you have to go the extra mile to make the actual? Just let the actor do his thing and he can smile. Looking back on it now, though, I like it a lot more than I did back then. So the whole thing kind of comes together for me, and it works. He really does give a stellar performance that should really go down in history as one of his best.
Agreed. And honestly, I had 2 notes. Number 2 was the production design. I felt that Anton Furst's designs for Gotham City were tremendous,
Agreed.
Influential. But yeah, this is Jack Nicholson's movie. Boy, was he smart to take the points over the payday, wasn't he?
Right.
This movie made him bank.
Sure did. From what I read, he made $60 million, which for a long time, I don't know if it's been beaten since. I'm sure it must have been by now, but that was, wow. You're absolutely right. That was a grand slam back then.
Yeah, good on him, man. And honestly, you know what? He worked his ass off for it. He did a great job. And he was the benchmark for Joker for many, many years.
Sure.
Until Heath Ledger came along. But even then, even with Heath Ledger's take on it, he's still referenced when Jerkhead did his little, damaged Joker in Suicide Squad. That was the comparison. You got compared to Heath Ledger and to Jack Nicholson. That's always going to be that way.
Very
forever.
True. Absolutely. And by the way, too, as much as we're praising Nicholson, we shouldn't let. I don't think we should let Michael Keaton go without a mention, because again, a guy who was told he can't be Batman, a guy who I still remember him going on interviews after this film, and he was, again, they were all over him, saying kind of like Daniel Craig when he got signed on to be James Bond. They did not. No one liked him as Batman, but he really did prove to be spectacular.
He was an excellent choice, and may still be my favorite Batman.
There you go.
So there you go. So yes, so from a Batman perspective, not the greatest translation, but it planted a good enough seed that it opened the world to the interesting side of Batman, and I'm all for that. I'm absolutely for that. Yes, Batman doesn't kill. Wasn't a fan of that, but it wasn't jarring enough. In the context of the movie, you're absolutely right. Tone makes everything. In the context of this movie, it made sense. And speaking of tone, let's talk about the tone for next week's movie.
Yeah, we really start to go down a certain road. It's so funny because, again, for a film that prided itself on getting away from the campiness of the 60s Batman series, it kind of slowly creeps back in, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And, we can thank McDonald's for that more than anything else. But next week, we will do Batman Returns. Much more of a Tim Burton movie than a Batman movie. We will discuss.
Yep. Burton returns, Keaton returns, and we will talk about it.
Indeed.
Another good one, and I'm looking forward to the next
absolutely.
few.
Oh yeah, this is, maybe I'm looking forward to next week. I'm not looking forward to the 2 weeks after that.
I'm looking forward to talking about them more than I'm looking forward to actually watching them.
That's kind of how I feel about that matter. All right, until next time, sir, you have a good night. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great night.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Jen! Make sure you wash my pajamas.